Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another movie review, and as you can tell, it's another entry in Monster Fest. Now, before we get too far into this video, I want to just give you a little warning if I seem a little out of it, just because this is the second time I had to record this one, because the microphone volume went all the way down, and it was basically just a bunch of video me doing this. So anyway, today's review is of the Japanese version of a movie that I did grow up with, kind of. It is Rodan, known in Japan as Sora no Daikaijū Radon, or translation, Radon, giant monster in the sky. But originally here it was released as Rodan the Flying Monster. Now I mentioned it when I think I might have mentioned it when I reviewed the English dub, but the reason it was called Rodan here is that on the periodic table of elements there is an element called Radon, so they changed it to Rodan to avoid people mistaking it. But I don't think anyone would have confused the element Radon with the giant flying pterosaur Radon. I think it was, especially since Radon is not a contradiction. So, well, what's the word when you take something and shorten it and you're using some of the words or something? Connotation? I think that's what it is. Connotation? I think it's something like that. I don't know. It's a word like that. That's why. Now, the movie was directed by Ishiro Honda, who, of course, is famous for directing all different types of Daikaiju films. You know, he directed the original Godzilla, the Mysterians. I believe he also directed Varan the Unbelievable. Yeah. The two Japanese King Kong films, King Kong vs. Godzilla and King Kong Escapes. Frankenstein Conquers the World and his sequel, The War of the Gargantuas. Anthragon, Space Amoeba, and several Godzilla sequels, you know, Destroy All Monsters, Terra Mechagodzilla, and of course the original Mothra. And the score was done by Akira Ifukube, who is known for doing a lot of the Daikaiju scores, which he actually did a pretty good score with this, and this is the first time I've heard it in its entirety, because in the English dub that was one of the many changes. The other one, of course, being one that I will mention later, which kind of goes hand in hand with the score. Now, the movie was written by Am I reading that right? Yeah, I'm reading that right. Apparently it was written by Ken Kuranuma, who wrote the original story for the film. He was inspired by an incident in Kentucky in 1948 when Captain Thomas Mantell, Kentucky Air National Guard pilot, died in a crash while allegedly pursuing a UFO. And of course, when you hear that and then you see a scene in the film, you can say, okay, I can see where the inspiration came from that. I guess you say it's kind of like writing backwards. You think of something, you're like, I want to see that in a film, and then you create the story backwards. I guess you could say kind of similar to the original beginning of A Fish Called Wanda, how they came up with it. A Fish Called Wanda just originated just from two scenes. Someone get run over with a steamroller, and a guy with a stutter being not able to get any word out. Anyway, the film, of course, was shot, and apparently during the film, a pulley broke and actor Haru Nakajima fell 25 feet. But he was saved because he was over water, and the wings of the Rodan costume actually helped slow his fall, and the water, even though it was only about a foot and a half deep, absorbed much of the impact. That would have been scary if it hadn't been over water. And of course, an interesting fact about the English dub is that George Takei was involved in it, just like he was in Godzilla Raids Again. Oh my. You know, add some vibrato. I guess I never noticed that he was involved in that. I wonder if he considers it I wonder if now in his older age he considers that an honor or not. I don't know. It'd be an interesting question to ask him. How dubbing Rodan was along with Godzilla Raids Again. From what I understand, I don't think he feels proud about that one, but anyway, who would be? Anyway, the plot of the film was that it takes place in a small mining village on the outskirts of Kyushu. One day, two miners named Goro and Yoshi go missing, which I guess you could say, watching this as a kid, I'm like, Goro, Yoshi? What? You know, that's just something funny to imagine. Goro from Mortal Kombat and Yoshi from Super Mario Brothers trapped in a mine. How are we gonna get out of this one? Yoshi! Getting real tired of your shit, Yoshi. You can just imagine that. It's funny. Surprised there already isn't a parody of that on Robot Chicken or something. Or even Goro fighting Rodan. You know, that'd be fun. Anyway, a search party is sent out to find them, and they find Yoshi dead. Lacerations and cuts all over him. And of course, you could tell there's going to be like, oh, did Goro do it? No, Goro couldn't have done it. So after a while, they send another search party in, and they are attacked by an insect creature, which eventually comes out of the mine, causes some havoc, and they eventually have to chase back into the mine, and then go and deal with it. And of course, when they go in and finally are dealing with it with machine guns, our hero, Shigeru, gets separated from them by a mine collapse, you know, rock slide, or whatever you call it inside a mine. Now he's gone for a little bit of the film, but then he reappears after an earthquake. He has amnesia for a little bit, but then something makes him remember what he saw in there. Apparently, not long after the collapse, he saw a bunch of these insects and he was hiding, and he also saw a giant egg that hatched, and it ate the insects, and of course that was Rodan. And of course, around the same time, we have that scene inspired by the incident that sparked the genesis of this film, or you could say was the nexus of the film. It is Rodan being chased by a plane, and he eventually turns around, hits the plane, and destroys it. And how they do introduce Rodan in this scene is very interesting, because you never see him except for like a split-second shot of him. It's all just a pilot reaction. And that, and with how the actors act, you could tell that this film has a serious tone. It's not super uber serious like the original Godzilla was, you know, with its anti-war or anti-nuclear weapons stance, but it's still a seriously toned monster film. Just, you know, for fun. It's like one for fun, but, you know, still trying to keep a serious tone. Which I guess you could say is kind of counteracted a little bit by, in retrospect, its special effects, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, as you can tell, eventually the military is going to have to deal with Rodan, because at one point it does eat a couple people. If it hadn't eaten those people, then they probably would have only dealt with it once Rodan actually came and landed. But they deal with Rodan, and then eventually they have a good fight scene with him inside of a city, which is where we find out there's two of them, with double the trouble. And eventually they track the Rodans back to their nests, and you can tell they're going to have to deal with them just like they dealt with Godzilla. Although in this case it's going to be a little bit easier because they're not indestructible. It's just that none of their weapons on the fighters are big enough to deal with these creatures, especially since they're so super fast. Now, the special effects of the film, I can tell you, they really haven't. They've aged in a way that they have a charm, but you could tell that the film was kind of hampered a little bit by the time, because this movie was made in, I think, '56. I know that's when it was released, but I think it was made earlier that year, which is only a couple years after the original Godzilla was made. In which, I have to say, in retrospect, they probably should have filmed the film in black and white. And now the reason I say that is that the original Godzilla film, part of the reason that the effects in that film still look very good, even though you can tell part of the time it's a hand puppet or something, and that the suit, you know, not the best, you know, when you look at all the suits since then, in design, maybe in look-wise, but not in, like, moving-wise and all that. But the fact that it was filmed in black and white and Godzilla was mostly seen at night added to his mystique, into his how scary he was. Or maybe how scary he looked would probably be better. With Rodan, since most of the scenes involving the creatures, it's during the day, and since it's in color, you lose those two advantages. If it had been in black and white, it might not have mattered if it was mostly during the day or at night, because you would have been able to compensate a little bit. Now, if you if you set some of the scenes at night, like the attack on the city, you might have been able to compensate even more. Because I think one of the biggest things I noticed with the effects, the suit, I will say, for Rodan looks good, even though you could tell parts of it, you know, part of it's cloth and all that, but that kind of adds to the 50s charm of the suit. And this is something I just noticed watching the Japanese dub. Maybe they edited around it. They think they edited around it in the English dub, or maybe I just didn't notice it then. Is that I noticed wires during some of the scenes with Rodan. It was mostly just like one scene. I'm like, is that a wire? Then when it cut back, like, yeah, that's a wire. I can see the wires. Granted, maybe it's because they did do wire work evolved after that, or maybe that was the best they could do at that time. But I noticed it. If it was at night in black and white, they probably could have hid those wires a lot better. But like I said, it adds to the 50s charm of the film, but it kind of contrasts with the serious tone of the film. If the film, I guess you could say, with the dub, since the dub is still uber serious, but has that over-the-top quality, I think there kind of balances out. But the other thing is how they do the Rodans when it's far away and they're flying. You know, it's like the little, like paper thing or whatever. I don't know what it is, like cloth thing. That also has a charm to it, but you can tell what it is. But at least there you can't see the wires. Now, the ending of the film, which I'm not going to spoil plot-wise what it is, but tone-wise, it looks like they're trying to recreate the same type of pity sadness that you get, that they tried to get with Godzilla's ending, but I just will say it kind of does. It makes you feel a little bit of a pity for him, but it's kind of a honor pity. I'm not going to spoil what, but those of you who've seen the movie's ending, you know what I'm you should probably know what I'm referring to, since there's two of them. That's all in the most detail I'm going to go into it. Which from that, it does kind of get the pity from you. I mean, even some of the characters in the film, they kind of do feel it. You can tell, at least the main character does a little bit because of what he's seeing. Which, this is where the Japanese ending is superior to the dub ending. Because in the Japanese ending, it's no line of dialogue from any of the characters as it's going on. The dialogue is after it's all said and done, and it's only by the military people who tell them to cease firing. And you can tell it's probably out of respect, just a little bit. But the whole time this is going on in the Japanese dub, only other thing you hear is the subtle score of Akira Ifukube. You know how that's ruined in the dub, in the American dub? The whole time this is going on, narration. They're just trying to beat it over the head. They gotta take the beating stick, the context stick, and beat you over the head with it. It's like, we get it. We get the context of this scene. We get what you're trying to say. You don't have to narrate over it. But it's like all the early English dubs, they just had to beat you over the head with context. I mean, granted, it's not that annoying. It's not as annoying in the Godzilla King of the Monsters one because, damn it, the actor Raymond Burr's narration wasn't as annoying. But even there, it's kind of distracting. It's like, we get it. We don't have to be spelled out everything. You can leave some stuff unsaid and we can figure it out. You don't have to say everything. But it kind of ruins the ending in the English dub. That's why I say unless I'm watching it with someone to show them the English dub, I probably won't watch the English dub again. Maybe I'll just stick to watching the Japanese dub. Granted, I actually can't multitask while doing it. Because with the dub, you can multitask. You can, like, listen to it while watching it, especially if it's a film you've seen a bunch of times. You're just watching it for entertainment value, and then when it's a scene you know you like watching all the time, you turn. But with the Japanese dub, you actually have to pay attention, but I don't mind that. That's one. I'll just, when I'm doing, if I'm busy, I'll just pause the film. Anyway, but I think I lost my train of thought. I know there was one other thing I was going to mention. I think that's about it. Just they beat the context over the head with you. Anyway, oh yeah. Okay, now I remember what I was going to say. Now, even though it does do that whole honor pity thing that it tries to gather from the audience, whether or not it will, that's up to you and your personal preferences, I guess. It still is not.